This week, it's the single most loved, most hated on, and best of the worst cars ever built. And maybe the worst of the best. That's all coming up on Drive. Whether bone stock or tuned, the B5 generation Audi S4 has a lot of fans. It also has a lot of not fans. Which one of those is Matt Farah? Let's find out.
For Quattrophiles, nothing gets all four wheels spinning better than a properly built B5 S4. Since we never got the RS4 in this country, the S4 was the epitome of early 2000s all-wheel drive performance, and the 2.7-liter twin-turbo V6 was a monster at the time. Right out of the box, it came with 260 horsepower and 291 pounds of torque, the latter of which peaked at a diesel-like 1800 RPM. Through the use of small Borg-Warner turbos, the stock S4's torque curve was more of a straight line across, one of the earliest cars to bring that power band down to a rev range that was usable on the road. Tuning changes all of that. While many S4 owners upgraded to the RS4 specs, if you really want to make big power, say over 400 at the wheels, you need to put in some real time and some real money towards some go-fast parts for that V6. Which brings me to Justin Liu's laser red 2001 S4 Avant, which makes 400 horsepower at the wheels, nearly double the stock number. In order to get there, Justin had to go the full bolt-on route, plus turbos, power adders, and drivetrain savers. That means upgrading the intake, exhaust, fuel system, ignition system, electronics, and of course the turbochargers, then adding meth injection and converting to E85. Backing all that up is a built 6-speed gearbox, RS4 clutch pack, upgraded drivetrain mounts, and massive 352mm slotted brakes.
Well, you have asked for it, and here it is, the B5 Audi S4. It does serve to be said that this is our second attempt at filming this car. It broke the first time, which I've pretty much come to expect from B5 Audis. They are not known for their reliability, and their reputation is well deserved. This particular car is actually quite rare. Only about 1,500 S4 Avants were imported into the US. Of those, 30 were red, and of those, only 18 came with a manual gearbox. Meaning I can safely tell you that this particular red S4 Avant is one of only 18 cars made. Even with miles on it, the interior is held up well. It's got a solid feel to it. Just doesn't really feel like a canyon car. It's not confidence inspiring in the way that I would like a canyon car to be. In a straight line though, it rides really well. It's got a beautiful ride quality to it. This is much more of a road trip car for me.
The S4's Achilles heel was always its handling. You see, despite the effectiveness of all-wheel drive, the V6 hangs way out in front of the front axle, an inherently unbalanced design, and features massive understeer as its primary handling characteristic. I once referred to the Audi S4 of this era as the car most likely to kill you through unfounded confidence. To keep all this in check, Justin's gone with a Bilstein PSS9 coilover suspension. He's upgraded the rear sway bar and rear subframe brackets. The whole package looks and feels remarkably cohesive.
Believe it or not, this is actually a budget build. By doing a lot of the work himself and being resourceful, Justin is able to have this, a 450 some odd horsepower Audi wagon, for less than the cost of a Prius. Things I don't like, well, the steering is totally numb on center, and the shifter, which is one of the worst shifters ever put into a manual gearbox car. To get into reverse, you have to press down, and so they've made it springy. So it bounces every time you go to change gear. It's the most infuriating thing you can imagine, having a shifter that moves in and out like that. It is funny how times have changed. In 2000, I was working in a Porsche Audi dealership, and when these S4s came in, and I got to drive one, I mean, I thought it was just the fastest thing on wheels. I am really glad to see people are keeping these cars alive and doing some neat stuff with them.
Justin's car is a beautiful example of a well-balanced road tourer, but what if you wanted to go further? What if you wanted to go from fast to bonkers? What would that take? This is an Imola Yellow S4 saloon. Believe it or not, it has traveled over 300,000 miles since departing the factory at Ingolstadt. The owner, also named Justin, has developed and redeveloped the powertrain over the car's entire lifetime to get it where it's at today, a practically unthinkable 600 all-wheel horsepower. That's 730 at the crank, folks. I've personally never seen a B5 with so much power, let alone driven one. So just how did Justin get there? It starts with a fully built engine, bored 60 over, making it a 2.8-liter V6. It's got diamond pistons with dropped compression, all the fuel and spark they can possibly shove into that motor, a combination of European RS4 parts, and choice aftermarket bits. There's a stealth water meth kit in the windshield wash bottle, giant RS6 hybrid turbos with GT28 wastegates, and a glorious sounding fast intentions exhaust. Behind all that is, believe it or not, a stock gearbox, mounted to a 6-puck clutch pack and Stasis' 4-to-1 center diff, which sends more power to the rear wheels than the original 50-50 balance. Helping the car fight its poor weight distribution is a set of KW Variant 1 coilovers with big sways, new upper control arms and end links, and a monster set of StopTech 6-piston brakes. This car has everything you can do to an S4, and yet looks mostly stock. You could call it a sleeper, as long as you don't hear it running.
So, we have seen what a solid daily driver type build looks like. 420 at the wheels or so, and that's well and good. That works nicely. It's got good power, it's got good sound, it's good for everyday use. But what if you needed something not for every day? What if you needed something that was a little on the crazier side, like this? It makes 600 horsepower at the wheels on E85, and if you take into account your standard Audi drivetrain loss, that translates to 730 horsepower from the twin turbo 6. This car does share some of the same drawbacks as the Avant. It still has numb on center steering. You still have to dial in a lot of steering to get it through the corner. And again, that engine is still way out in front of the front axle, meaning understeer is going to be your prevalent handling characteristic. Still though, even with all of this work done to it, even with all this power and all this suspension, still not the perfect canyon car. You're trying to do something with it that it isn't really meant to do. It's just, you're fighting a battle against physics and you're losing. This car is not reliable. Everyone knows that. It's already broken once today. But it is built well in that this with 300,000 miles, if you were to just look at this car, you wouldn't guess it had over 100,000 miles on it. The paint, the leather, all that has held up really, really nicely. So I will absolutely give them credit where it's due. It's hard to sort it out in my head because on the one hand, I love that surging feel of a turbocharged engine. On the other hand, it leaves you in a car like this with a very narrow power band in which to work. And so either you shift all the time just to keep up with it, or you have to deal with it going in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. My biggest problem with both these cars is that every time I turn the wheel, I ask myself, is it gonna stick? I'm just not sure. I can't be certain it will grip. When I was in high school, a lot of kids I knew convinced their parents to buy them these, I think because they just didn't know what they were, and they all promptly crashed them. That's not a joke, and that is not exaggeration. Every person I knew who had one of these when it was new crashed it at high speed into a stationary object.
I came away from this film with a love-hate relationship for the S4. I love it in all its oddball glory. I love the looks, the size, I love the sound, and the practicality. I love the wagon. They can make big power, clearly, and would absolutely kill at the Florida highway racing game, but at the expense of usability with no real torque down low. Both of these cars broke at one point or another during the shoot, which makes me kind of hate them. The shifter's miserable, and there's nothing you can do about it. And no matter how much suspension you throw at it, the simple truth is that these cars don't handle very well, and a brand new S3 is probably quicker down the road or a track than either of these cars, even with only 300 horsepower. Audi's come a long way in the last 10 years, and while I can appreciate the style and feel of the old cars, I'm looking forward to Audi's future.